Gordon, glad to have you on our show.
Thank you so much, Cathy.
Yes, so first of all, yesterday President Biden held a bilateral meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister Kishida. So, what's the major takeaway from the meeting in terms of the two countries towards China?
The most important thing is that Japan and the United States are on the same page when it comes to China. And they both recognize that China is the primary threat. So, this was one of the most important bilateral meetings that President Biden will have this year. The important thing here also is that Japan has made it very clear that they are going to take active measures to defend themselves. Kishida's visit with Biden was his fifth of this trip. And he met basically the entire G7 except for Germany. And they've signed up a lot of deals. You know, in the past, it would take Japan a decade in order to ink a defense agreement. Now they're putting them together within a month because Japan understands the urgency of the situation.
So, how strong or weak is the Japanese government towards Chinese government at this time? And how do you read Prime Minister Kishida's attitude towards the Communist China?
I think the Kishida government is quite strong, especially after last month. We saw their national security strategy and supporting documents. The two things that jump out at people, one of them, of course, is that Japan plans to double its defense spending in 5 years from 1% of GDP to 2%. But the more important thing is that Japan is getting rid of its self-imposed restrictions on counterstrikes. In other words, Japan will attack an attacker's homeland. And that really makes Japan an equal partner in the mutual defense relationship with the United States. In the past, Japan, because of its imposed restrictions, really only was a base for the United States, which did the heavy lifting. Now, both Japan and the US will participate together in strikes on China. And that is a significant change for Japan that had really been pacifist for a very long time. So after the assassination of former Prime Minister Abe in July, many people thought that Japan would sort of slink back, but no, it's moving forward.
So, what do you think if CCP, Chinese Communist Party, targets a war against Taiwan? Would Japan join or stand by the side?
I think Japan does not stand by because the Chinese won't let it. For an invasion of Taiwan to be successful, China has to establish a blockade. For that blockade to be successful, it has to include sovereign Japanese territory, specifically the island of Yonaguni, which is Japan's westernmost and southernmost inhabited island, which is very close to Taiwan. Matter of fact, it's actually south of Taipei. So Japan's going to be involved in this. Also, the Chinese doctrine would be to hit not just Taiwan, but to hit Guam and hit American bases on Japanese soil. So I don't think Japan's going to really have very much of a choice.
Recently, CSIS had a wargaming report on CCP's invasion upon Taiwan and concluding it will fail. But also United States will pay a big price. So how do you think of the assessment? Do you agree?
The assessment looks right. There are a lot of variables, but I think that is generally correct. I don't think that China prevails for a number of reasons. So in general, I agree with the CSIS assessment.
The CSIS conclusion hinges upon United States will enter the military conflict immediately or Taiwan will fall in 2 to 3 months. What is the likelihood that you think United States will do that?
Because Chinese doctrine is to hit Guam and American bases in Japan, that doesn't leave the U.S. any choice. So I think that the U.S. has to respond after an attack like that.
A lot of people are assessing how soon the CCP will have attack on Taiwan. What is your assessment?
It can really be at any time. It's very difficult for us to judge intentions, but we can see what China is in fact doing. China is, of course, involved in the most rapid military buildup since the Second World War, but it's also sanction-proofing its regime. And most ominously, it is preparing its civilians for war. It's mobilizing them. So we have to assume that they are doing this for a purpose, which means it could be at any time. And you know, it's not so much that Xi Jinping wakes up one morning and says, oh, I'm going to invade Taiwan or Japan or the Philippines. The thing that we have to be concerned about in terms of timing is that China is engaged in these very dangerous intercepts in the global commons, in the air and on the sea. And one of those could actually end up with an accident that results in the deaths of American, Australian, or Japanese service people. So that really could be the trigger.